Guys, what's going on? I'm going to answer a little Q&A here. Got an interview that came in from Instagram, and just going to crush some of these questions. Got some training questions, got some business questions, got some where is the underground strength gym going in the next 10 years. So let's see what we got here. This is coming in from Phil, and I'm going to link up his website in the section of the info here on YouTube. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, and you can check that out. So Phil says, real proud to have me on as a guest. And he says, I got inspired by Zach, where he spoke about always, living the code 365, getting out of your comfort zone, not always following all the rules in the training books. And of course says his gym doesn't have machines. It's got an old school vibe. And Zach's all about getting strong on the basics, which he constantly preaches. Says, how old were you when you first started training? And how old were you when you first started training people? So I began training in early June of 1989. It was about 2 weeks before 8th grade ended. I remember working out in my brother's room. He had an old weeder bench. We had sand-filled weights. And I remember later that summer, he bought the Solo Flex. So anybody who's my age, I'm 40, whoever's 40 and up, you remember that Solo Flex commercial. The guy in the commercial was just built, and we assume that if we get Solo Flex, we'll be built like that. Holy shit. So it says, so when did I get started with training people? By the time I was a sophomore, maybe a junior in high school, my friends that were on various sport teams were always asking me, dude, write me up a workout for football, write me up a workout for baseball, soccer, you name it, for track and field. So every time I'd open up a book for whatever class it was, math, science, history, there was always sheets of paper in there, and I was writing workouts or reading Flex magazine. I had a real hard time focusing in school because all I could think about was training. It was just on my mind. Around early sophomore year, I took out of the library Arnold's Education of a Bodybuilder, and I never brought it back. So I kept re-signing it out. So I read it for about 3 years straight because I was afraid somebody else would learn Arnold's secrets. I did not want anybody to have Arnold's secrets except for me. So I started kind of, helping some of the guys out in high school. Then I started getting guys that were a little bit older than me training with me at the local gym. So I was always the guy that kind of created the workout, spotted, inspired, coached everybody. I'll never forget some of them. They were friends with each other, but they'd call me up and say, I don't want to train with Steve. I want to train with you. Steve doesn't pump me up. Jimmy doesn't get me fired up. He don't motivate me. I need to work out with you, Zach. When are you going to be at the gym? So it was this, the beginning. And then my first training job was 95 in the fall, I believe. And I was in college, and I got my first job at a hospital fitness center. And basically in the afternoon, the hospital employees, whether it was doctors, nurses, the financial people, they would come in and train. And we would just guide them through workouts, no personal training, just guided them. And in the summertime, some of the parents would start bringing some of their kids with them to the gym, and I began helping them with workouts. And I remember the first one, when I look back at oh man, how did the basics of the training help? Well, I wasn't considered a strength coach, but I remember this mom and dad brought their son who was a wrestler, and I just had him doing things like deadlift, bent over row, benching, pull-ups, dips, sprinting on an incline on the treadmill. And that kid went on that year. I remember he won the regions and placed in the States. And I was like, wow, man, all I did was the basics with him. And the reason why I was in shock was because one of the guys that was a coach there, this is when functional training was coming out. He had a kid doing stuff on a stability ball. He was doing curling and pressing, standing on one foot. And I was like, I must be doing this wrong. I'm not standing on a ball. I'm not standing on one leg. But I did what I believed in my heart. And that was the beginning, 1995. Next question is, when did the first gym begin? And the first gym, I guess if we want to call it that, was when I began training athletes from my parents' garage and backyard. Picked up some used equipment from newspaper classifieds, some stuff on early days eBay, back when eBay was very much like a garage sale. And I was right after the 5th year teaching, so I believe it was 2002, it was the summer actually before that. So it was 4th year, 2002, and then I really started picking it up 2003 that summer. But 2002, I began training kids until the winter time came. And then it was too cold to train them outside or even in the garage. It says, did you go to school to become a trainer? Did you take any training, nutrition, posture courses? And if so, which ones? So that's a great question, because the landscaper saw me wearing the Underground Strength gym shirt, and he goes, oh, that's you that owns the Underground Strength gym. What did you do? Did you go to college for that? And yes, I've got my undergrad in health and phys ed, and you take all the exercise science classes. I got my master's degree in health education. But when I look at what is my training, where does the knowledge come from? I look at kind of two big things. Number one, my experience of training and working out since 1989. Like, I understand how training affects the body and the mind, and I know what it takes. I know what athletes need physically and mentally, and I know where there's bullshit, and I know where there is truth. That's number one. So being, somebody who's worked out since age 13 and now I'm 40, 27 years, I don't have my head up my ass, and I'm not easily duped like so many other coaches. College mostly helped me with the organization, the structure behind managing large numbers, especially coming from my teaching. But I'd say the other thing that really got to me is the studying of the methods of successful athletes, coaches. So there's been a huge influence from people like Louis Simmons, Travis Mash, studying anybody who's utilized a kind of like a general physical preparation model that's been modeled after a lot of what the Soviets were doing, decades ago. And that's how I look at the training of athletes. And then there is the blending of those two things, because when athletes come in nowadays at age 13 or 15, they are not like the athletes that are being, brought into training out in Eastern European countries. They have a much better training model. So as an independent strength coach, I'm oftentimes getting kids who are out of shape, can't squat with bodyweight, can't do a push-up. So you have to use common sense and knowledge and not fall prey to the fads and the gimmicks. As far as courses I've taken, I can't even keep up with all the training knowledge that I've pulled in, whether it's an online course or not, especially my early days when there were a lot of DVDs and training courses. Nowadays, people can't get the fuck off of Facebook. They can only watch shit on Facebook or Instagram, so their learning is less. I'm still reading a lot of books, and I listen to a lot of podcasts of coaches I respect. I follow a lot of the college strength coaches who are doing a great job, and some of the independent coaches as well. People that are in the trenches, really, they're still training people versus just training themselves. Favorite pre and post workout meal for someone trying to lose weight, as well as somebody trying to pack on size. I got to see the person. If you're trying to lose weight, I'm a big believer in just earning your carbs. We've often heard that saying. So have a little bit of carbs before and then have your carbs after. Otherwise, a lot of protein, a lot of veggies. If you're trying to gain size, we want a blend of protein, carbs, and fats. And of course, your training has to get a little bit of that repetition method, or a lot of the repetition method, to boost your strength, to boost your size. So if you're only training in that 1 to 5 rep range, you're not going to get big. So when I see an athlete who needs to get jacked, which is often the case, they often just don't eat enough. So I give them a recipe to make a homemade protein shake. I want to see breakfast, lunch, afternoon meal, post-workout meal, maybe even an intra-workout shake, and also a late at night snack / meal. Lots of steak, potatoes, pasta, whole milk, whole eggs, various types of meats, red meat, all different kinds of steaks and burgers. Most people just don't work hard enough nutrition-wise and or training-wise. So their lack of dedication creates this hard gainer bullshit excuse. And the people that need to lose weight, they have to clean out their kitchen. Don't eat all the shit food. And that's discipline, you know. Jocko Willink says, discipline equals freedom. How many people are willing to be disciplined enough to eat properly and to eat as much as they need and train as hard as they need and live the lifestyle? Some people say that if you cannot bench 225 for 5, squat 315 for 5, or deadlift 405 for 5, then you're considered a novice lifter. Do you agree with this? I mean, there's more things than just the numbers. I've known people that could deadlift 405 for 5 but can't do 5 or 10 pull-ups. I know people that could squat 315 for 5 but they can't do 20 push-ups. You know, there's so many things that, you know, novice, this, that. I actually, as much as I've been training so long and built in all this knowledge, I never find myself saying I'm good enough. I have this inner novice feeling where I desire to learn. I think those numbers are good. Sure, you could be a novice there. Squat 315, you know, deadlift 405. I'm somewhat going to agree with that, but I think there's a lot more than meets the eye than just those 3 lifts. What's the big difference between training males and females for the most part? I've found through my experience that girls respond differently to coaching. They most often aren't into the intense, aggressive style of coaching that the males can handle. Females need to train differently. There's certainly, as far as like the athletes go, there's certain issues that women or female athletes are dealing with, which is a lot of ACL injuries, very high incidence. I think 4 or 5 years ago, from something like 2002 until 2010, Kelly Starrett said something like ACL injuries amongst female athletes were up 400%. So they're less involved in strength. That's always been that kind of big concern with girls. So we kind of coerce them into understanding that being strong will not make you bulky and building them up. And girls in general, I found, are very lax with their mobility and flexibility. They're not that strong. So I try to train them with that same thing of building their weaknesses, which is how I look at a lot of the boys. These high school athletes and middle school athletes that we train are often very weak, not just physically, but mentally. They tend to cave in when the going gets tough. So we're building more than just the physical and mental. What are the requirements? Somebody needs to be a coach at your gym, at the Underground Strength Gym. They go through an internship of 60 days, but they got to get invited to that. More often than not, I prefer to have a former athlete who has been through the system and who has been transformed through our system of training, because he will understand what it takes. Also, I need high energy and a commitment to excellence. You might be a great athlete, but you may not have the high energy that it takes to fire up the athletes. So I need somebody who's committed to excellence. What's the best way to keep your athletes coming back as long as possible? You know, from a business standpoint, there's a lot of, questions that go inside of that question. Some parents can't afford it for the long term. Some athletes don't want to be there the long term. They don't like working hard over and over again. I think that the bottom line is you got to keep doing a great job, providing results, challenging that athlete. So if he is maybe the strongest in that group, how do you make him feel challenged so he's not feeling like a big fish in a small pond? The other thing that's important here is I don't try, we hear a lot of this talk about like creating the community. Athletes are so busy between all the sports, the clubs, the schools, their parents' life. We don't train adults. So yes, a community and a atmosphere must be created and connected, but we're not doing these tricks like, oh, we got to throw a party and a barbecue. Our athletes are not staying around waiting for some fucking barbecue. Their parents want results, and you must deliver on that. And I think that is clutch. And if you're a coach who cares, genuinely cares, you'll always find a way to build results, to get them results, to give them excellence. Next question here. Where do you see the underground and your career going in the next 10 years? Next 10 years, I'd like to see what we do in the underground expanding into the high schools. My big goal is to have our training system planted within the schools so coaches can have a proven system to follow, a safe training system, a physical preparation program, and it's in the schools all around the country. To me, that's where I see this going. That's it, guys. That's the last question. If you like this, make sure you share it with your friends. If you got further questions, follow me on Twitter or Instagram, linked up below. And that's it, guys. Undergroundstrength.tv. Peace.